Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever time it is in the world you're in. Hope you're all doing well today. I think it's time to talk about change. What do you think? It's time to talk about why change is so difficult. It's time to explore some ideas about how you can implement change in your life and not be bogged down. You kidding me? There we go. We've got a stable connection at this point. Hang on, I'm going to change one little thing just to ensure that. I think we're still good. Right, here we go. Hey, nice to see you. Nice to see you. Sorry, hey Janine, nice to see you, beautiful. How are you, my friend? All is well, I hope. Yeah, so this thing called change, right? You do it, you live it, you plan it, you think about it, you breed it, you fear it. What is this thing called change? Well, my mom used to say that change is what happens when you make plans, and I never fully understood what that meant until one day I realized that change it's an illusion. Change is something that let me explain that. It's an illusion in the sense that we're always changing, we're always growing, we're always evolving. Just like the nature in this park, it's always dynamically moving and changing and shifting and growing and evolving, just like human beings. And so oftentimes what we do is we say, oh my God, I've got a big change coming, or change is on the horizon, or I've been changing a lot. But the reality is you're changing every second of every single day because you're growing and evolving and becoming something better and better in every way, every single day. And so why do people get bogged down? Well, this morning I was looking at Facebook, and my dear friend Amy Kearney made a post about less than 5% of people who spend money on a workshop or a retreat, no matter how much money it costs. It can be real inexpensive, it can be real expensive, but only 5% of the world actually implements on change. They say, I want my life to be different, and then they take action to do something about it. And what I'd like you to think about in your own life right now is, what would you like to take action on, and why the hell are you not taking action on it? What's bogging you down? Now, I'm going to help you understand what's bogging you down, because it's really quite simple. When you know what holds you out of change, you can shift it and move into change more beautifully in an amazing sort of way. So, here's how it all works, okay? And this is basic human functioning 101. Human functioning 101, okay? First of all, we grow up in this world where we think there's a sense of predictability in our ability to plan what's happening in our world. We have experiences in our lives growing up that cause us a lack of safety in the world. It might be an experience with another person, a failure, a perceived failure that we have, a challenge, a trauma, a death, a divorce. We have some experience in our lives that causes us to feel fear. Right? So what I want you to make a mental note of is that your inability to change real time is because you're harboring a fear somewhere. A fear of security, a fear of stability, a fear of knowledge, a fear of process, a fear of identity. There's some fear that's undergirding why you don't change. What is that fear? Is it a fear that you're going to be seen? Is it a fear that you're not going to make muster? Is it a fear that the change in your life is going to be so overwhelming that you won't be able to handle it? Whatever that fear is, when you think about the change in your life, if you can identify very, very quickly what the fear is, then you can step more rapidly into the change. Now, we have these fears about change because we have been taught to not trust ourselves. We've been indoctrinated to believe that we're incapable, that we're broken, that we're flawed, that we have issues, that we need some type of support along this journey. And because of all these shitty stories we hold in our heads, we continue to stay bogged down in our suffering. So let me get really hardball with you right now. If you want to change in your life, if you want to step out of a place of suffering, if you want to move to a place of joy, peace, and purpose, if you want to really dynamically and beautifully, liberally embrace something bigger and greater and different than what you're living right now, you must Look at your fears. Now, an interesting thing about these fears that we hold, they all come from experiences or people or our indoctrination. I could talk for 14 hours about where our fears come from. But what happens is we have a fear inside of our head, and then we begin to act out of that fear. Now, let me say that boldly in a different sort of way. Every single thing you do in your life is for one of two reasons: to pursue pleasure or to mitigate fear. Pursue pleasure or mitigate fear. And what are you doing? Are you pursuing pleasure in your life? Are you seeking a life of joy, peace, and purpose? Are you mitigating a fear of some sort? A fear that you're not worthy, a fear that you're insignificant, a fear that you're not going to be taken care of, a fear that the world is, that the shoe is going to drop, a fear that you'll never be loved, a fear that you'll be alone, a fear that you are disconnected from others. What is that fear? Because when you can get at the fear, you can begin to change the stories. Here's how it works. Let's say I have a fear of unworthiness. I have a story in my mind that says I am less than and I should compare and despair when I look at others. I should evaluate my life constantly. Let's say that the fear of unworthiness, which really means that if I don't perform, if I don't do the right thing, then I'm not going to be worthy. Whoa. And so what you do is you set yourself on a course of action, and you become a dancing monkey. You begin to perform through life. You put different masks on every day because you're mitigating that fear of unworthiness. You manipulate relationships certain ways. You show up at work certain ways. You live outside of integrity because you're operating out of fear. Let me say that in a more bold way. You cannot live fully in integrity if you have any fears that you're mitigating. Okay, so you develop these stories, and then all of a sudden, one thing leads to another, and those stories become your reality. And what you do is you develop a fixed reality through your fears. This is how the world should be. This is the way the world could be. This is the way that my world feels safe. This is what I need around me to ensure that I'm safe and worthy. These are the types of conversations. These are the types of people. And if all of that works well, then you've mitigated your fear and you can actually start to live. But what if it's all a lie? What if all those fears that you're mitigating are simply a lie of your ego that is suppressing your soul and not allowing you to live fully and beautifully and brilliantly? So, number one, identify your fears. And sometimes, if I'm working with you, here's what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to say, okay, tell me what your fear is. Then when you have a difficulty articulating it, I'm going to say, get under that. Dig a little deeper. Dig a little deeper. Dig a little deeper. Because our fears are insidious little bastards. They hide out. They disguise themselves. But if you do enough soul searching, deep soul searching, you'll begin to see how your life is directed by fears. Fear of unworthiness, fear of insecurity, fear of acceptance or lack thereof, fear of not being acceptable, fear of not being seen, fear of being abused, fear of being isolated. Fears, fears, fears. We're swimming in fears. And like no other time in history have I seen people swimming in more fear now than they ever have. It's tragic. And so you identify the fear, and then you know what the story is that undergirds that fear. All the things you tell yourself. You're not good looking enough. You're not smart enough. This is all tied to the root wound of unworthiness. You don't compare to your peers. You haven't arrived in the way that you're supposed to. You don't have anything to show for yourself. Fear, fear, fear. Bullshit fear. That's all that is. And so what you do is you systematically begin to question those stories. What I often will do is, let's say I'm feeling a little needy and clingy and unworthy and like I'm a big old piece of shit. So if I have a thought, oh, Trey, you're kind of stupid. Or why aren't things moving as quickly as they should? Or why do you not have more money in your bank account? Or the list goes on, and it's all just a big old pile of shit. But anyway, when that happens, what I do is, instead of diving into that analysis and diving into those thoughts of oppression, I simply hold that thought and I say, wow, that's an interesting perspective. How else could I look at this? Well, maybe you're tired right now. Okay. Maybe you need to get out into nature. Maybe you need to ground yourself. Maybe you need to rest. Maybe you need to write. Maybe you need to explore the gift of service for someone else. Maybe you need to get out of your damn mind and get into the world. Because sometimes in order to step out of fear, we simply have to change our state. Change the state. Now, how do you change your state? For me, when those fears are cropping up, there's a pivotal moment where you say, am I going to indulge this fear, this inadequacy, this limitation, this oppressive belief? Am I going to choose right now to believe it? And here's the bottom line, you guys. I will fight you to the mat about one big thing, and that is that we create our reality. We create how we live in the world. We create the relationships that we have. We create the perceptions that we have about the world. We create all of it. You've seen and heard phrases like live lightly in the world. Well, if you want to live lightly in the world, you create that. You've met people that are angry and hostile and frustrated and always moaning and groaning and bitching about something. They create that. They create that. So what are you creating? How are you waking up every day and creating the life of joy, peace, and purpose that you want? Or are you bogged down in a fear? And my hunch is that a lot of you, including myself, have been bogged down in fear. Well, guess what? Okay, now I'm going to get bold with you, right? When you're bogged down in fear, what you essentially are doing is saying to your master creator, the cosmos, the universe, God, I don't give a shit how you phrase it, but what you're essentially saying when you're living rooted in your fear, in your own paralysis, first of all, you think that you have something that you can actually control. Guess what? Somebody lied to you. The only thing you can control is your perceptions and your reactions. But here's the other thing you're doing. When you play those self-sabotaging stories in your mind of limitation, of fear, of insignificance, of weakness, really what you're doing is looking at all of creation. And you're looking at all of Creator. At all knowledge before and behind us. At all other people. And you're effectively saying, fuck you. To whatever that cosmic source is. Fuck you. And I'm sorry if that's bold, and I'm sorry if that offends you, but I'm not here to offend you. I'm here to knock you out of that tree of fear. Because you, my friends, are beautiful, brilliant, creative expressions of something amazing and wonderful and something so far beyond our comprehension. You. And if you look in the mirror and you say, my boobs are going south, my ass is going east and west, I don't have enough money in my bank account, I'm looking old. If you say that bullshit to yourself, what you're really doing is the same thing. Fuck you. Instead, I want you to stand in a place of profound peace, profound gratitude, and profound awareness that you're being molded and shaped and given opportunities every day to evolve differently. Every single day to evolve differently. You're growing and evolving and perfecting. And by the way, if you think you actually are controlling the journey, you've lost your mind. Now let me explain. You are controlling the journey to the degree that you are perceiving and reacting to what's going on in your life. That's it. That's all. Right? So do you want to control the journey? Control it. By being angry, by being self-defeatist, by having limiting thoughts, by effectively killing yourself one thought at a time? Or do you want to seize that power? Do you want to reach into your gut and you say, I am a brilliant, beautiful creation? Repeat that after me right now to yourself. I am a brilliant, beautiful creation. I am an expression. I am an expression of something so much bigger and greater that I can't even understand it. But what I can do is interact with it. What I can do is hold a place of curiosity about my world and about people and about the experiences that people are living. I can hold in curiosity why I'm on a journey and what that journey looks like, but I can't really figure it all out. All I have to do is hold it in curiosity and celebrate it in gratitude. Hold it in curiosity and celebrate it in gratitude. Going back to that idea, let's say you have that shitty thought that comes in. Instead of indulging that thought, I want you to simply say, that's one way of looking at it. What other ways could I look at my life right now? If you're limited on cash, maybe right now you're giving yourself the opportunity, maybe you're evolving into a place where you realize that you don't need all that shit. Get rid of it. Couple years ago, well, let me give a little bit of historical context. I used to be so rooted in fear, and my fear, the way that I mitigated fear in my life was to accumulate shit. I was a professional hoarder, but here's the funny thing. You would have never known it because I look just like so many people in the world. 3-car garage, 2 bays full of shit, 1 bay barely able to hold a car, rooms full of shit. Clothes. Do you know I had 36 boxes of unwashed clothes at one point in my life because I was building up, I was accumulating. I was like a little squirrel putting all those nuts in my mouth and hiding them somewhere. And then my stuff started to consume me because my stuff was nothing more than a representation of the fear in my life. And that, my friends, might be what's going on with you. And so I set myself on a course to go from spending 13 grand a month to managing all my shit, to the point where I could live on less than $1,000 a month. I also went on a journey to say everything I owned needed to be able to fit in the trunk of a car. Now, I know that sounds maybe insane to you, but for me, getting rid of all the stuff was my way of facing my fear. You know, when you walk into your home and you realize that you could put everything you own in the back of a car in a matter of a couple of hours, that gives you freedom. Freedom to move to a place of expression, exploration, creation, creativity, and curiosity. So if you're bogging down right now about money, I want you to do 2 things. Look around and say to yourself, what do I have in here that I don't need? Why do I have it? And maybe I should release it. And then second thing about money, if you have a fear about money and you're thinking about how you're going to pay your bills and what you're going to cover and how you're going to move this to pay that, rob Peter to pay Paul, manage this problem and that problem, if you're caught in that whirlwind, you are clinging to the top of the fence and you are manifesting tragedy and difficulty in your life. Remember, it goes back to that idea that what you think about, you bring about. So if you're saying, oh my God, I got an energy bill and I've got to figure out how to pay it and I don't have any money right now. Oh my gosh, I don't have it. I don't have any money. Right? Then what you're doing is effectively sending a loud and profound message that you are in lack. You are in lack. You're breeding lack. So instead, what if you said to yourself, great things flow to me and through me. I live in a state of abundance and peace. I know that all of my needs will be taken care of. And you take yourself out of the equation. Now, I'm also not some freakadoodle that says you just have to put it out into the universe and then sit on your ass, wait for it to show up. What I'm saying is it's about shifting the way you think. And if you shift your way of thinking into an abundance mentality, not a lack mentality, then you put action behind it. Action. Because ideas coupled with action make things happen. And when you're in a state of flow, things happen. So think about it right now. What are you bogging down on? Are you bogging down on a relationship? Are you bogging down on your finances? Are you bogging down on how your children are growing up? Are you bogging down on some change with your job coming up? Are you bogging down on some argument or fight that occurred? Are you bogged down in the drama of your external family? Where are you bogged down? And now when I say bogged down, what I mean is, where is your head? What are you thinking most about right now? So I was working with a dude this weekend that flew in from San Francisco. And essentially I did 4 intensive days of looking at every fear he had. Whoa. Dude. I mean, we dissected fear over a 63-year life. And then we looked at all the stories of what that fear meant and how it's affected his life. The patterns he's completely repeated over and over and over and over and over. And then there came a point where he looked at me and he said, I get it. I get it. I've been breeding sorrow. I said, well, what are you going to do about that? He said, I guess I need to learn how to breed hope. So if you want to learn how to breed hope, it's about getting rid of those limiting thoughts, those limiting ideas, those stories of fear. Now, let me say one more thing about that, right? When you do that, when you face your fears, when you dig deeply into the stories of oppression that you've held on to for your entire life, when you face the fact that you are in control of your suffering, boom, guess what happens? You're invited to a position of responsibility like you've never seen before. Now, here's what I mean. It's not about responsibility of how you manage your job or your family or your money. That's responsibility through performance. What I'm talking about is responsibility for your soul. And if you are fully responsible for your soul, first of all, you know that you're on the journey alone. There are other people that are going to bump up against you. But ultimately, you are on a divine path that is alone. That's the first thing I want you to remember. And the second thing I want you to think about is that taking responsibility for your soul is believing fully in the deepest part of your heart that you are responsible for every thought. Every thought. None of these, not a little bit of this half-assery where somebody else has made you feel a certain way or made you think something. No, you're responsible for your thoughts. All of them, in their totality. You also are fully responsible for your emotions. So my friend Liz and I were chatting the other day, and she said she was sitting on her porch one day and trying to have a sad moment, which I do this on occasion, just trying to have a sad moment. She was laughing about how she was trying to get sad and think about things that made her sad and listen to music that made her sad. And then she looked around and she said, look at this beautiful place in creation that I exist. Look at me as an expression of creation. And she shifted out of that place of sadness into a place of gratitude. That is responsibility for your emotion. And the third thing about being soulfully responsible is being responsible for how you live in the world. How responsible are you right now? Do you look at every single person you interact with and say, they are intersecting in my world for some brilliant, beautiful reason, and I don't need to know why, I simply need to stand in gratitude? Do you look at people that are struggling in your life and you see them as irritations or frustrations, or do you hold them in a place of peace and know that they're on their journey and that they will find their path? Do you take on the pain and struggle of other people because it gives you value or purpose or meaning? Or do you let people swim in their own sorrow, knowing that they're divinely inspired, divinely connected, and something beautiful is happening in their lives? You know, one of the most difficult things to do is allow people to walk and suffer, to sit in their own soup. But let me tell you why I believe that's so important. Because when you let someone sit in their soup, they eventually will have to figure out how to get out of it. You cannot rescue them. You cannot develop some codependent, needy, clingy relationship with them, because that's all driven out of your need to mitigate a fear. Your need for worthiness, your need for significance, your need for purpose, whatever. And the bottom line is everybody's on their own journey. So what's your journey look like right now? What are you wrestling with that you don't have to? And why? Why are you not changing? Well, let me rephrase that. Because here's the thing. You already are. Why can you not acknowledge that you're evolving every single day? Why do you have to run back to your past, screaming at your past, digging in your past, excavating your past, looking for an answer to some question that is not germane? Why are you doing it? Why are you running toward the future? I really wonder about this. Why are you planning and predicting and strategizing and structuring your future? Now, don't get me wrong, we got to all have something to focus on. We got to have something to be passionate about. But here's the crazy thing. What we're planning tomorrow or the next day or the next day or the next day or 5 months from now or 10 years from now, guess what? You might walk out on the street right now, get hit by a bus, and your days are over. And guess what? You don't know when that's going to happen. So why are you breeding the future, or why are you just wallowing in the past? You're going to your past because you're trying to make meaning out of something. You know that old adage that hindsight is 20/20? The only reason that hindsight is 20/20 is because you're a new evolved version. You can see your previous self differently. But that does not give you the right to go back into your past and evaluate you real time. That's cerebral masturbation. It's a waste of time. So, here's what we do. We take full responsibility for our actions, our thoughts, our emotions, our interactions with others. Full responsibility. We leave nothing unturned. We know our souls deeply. We face our greatest fears. And we live fully in a moment right here. This little 3-foot square. Right here. That little 3-foot square around you. And you breathe. And you celebrate. And you create in the moment. Create in the moment. So how do you want your day to look and feel? How do you want your life to look and feel? How do you want people to respond to you? If you want to have people respond in anger and frustration and hostility and challenge towards you, because if you do, you'll create that. Or do you want people to respond to you in peace and grace and perfection? Because you will create that as well. You know, I got to tell you, a couple of weeks ago, I walked down to the market, which is just about a block away. And there's a woman down here that gave me a whole lot of shit for about a year. Gave me a lot of grief. Really kind of messed up my world in some really interesting ways. Now, I could blame her for that, but I made a choice to engage with this woman. So, but anyway, for about a month or so, I'd walk down on the Tuesday market and I would see her, and then I'd flare up and I'd say, oh, that bitch did this. Crumbly, crumply, grumbly asshat. So today I decided that I was going to do it differently, to shift that story. And as I walked through the market, I decided to spread a little bit of peace and joy to every person that I met. And that was simply by doing some drive-by smiling. That's drive-by smiling. Saying hello. How are you today? How's your work going? How's the weather treating you? How's your family? It's so nice to see you. Don't be discouraged. The tourist will be back. Everything is good. Everything is beautiful. Breeding beauty and peace wherever I was. Because I chose to create that for my own experience. My little bubble was a little bubble and is a little bubble of beauty and peace. And no matter what's hitting on the outside, I can handle that. And I noticed something. As I began to walk in the market, it felt different. And I have to believe that maybe I spread some joy with some folks, but the more important thing is that it felt different for me. Because I had shifted out of fear and shifted into power. Out of fear into responsibility. So I'm going to call the question with you. Where are you being irresponsible with your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions? If there's anybody in your world that you're blaming for anything, guess what? You're acting irresponsibly. If there's any feeling about something going on in your life right now, guess what? You're acting irresponsibly if you're driving yourself into a fear place. Let me give you another example, and then I'll tie a bow on this, right? So not too long ago, a friend of mine told me that he felt like he was in his final days of life. And he doesn't have very good health. And, you know, the likelihood of that is fairly high because he doesn't matter what he's done. He's been on the path, right? And I've watched progressively over a couple of years how he has taken less care of himself. And it's almost as if he's been on this trajectory to flame out. And so he said, you know, I don't think I'll be alive in the next 3 months. And I said, wow, really, that's difficult to hear. And I indulged the conversation. What do you think that means? What do you need to do? What are you most afraid of? And then I found I did something interesting. I went that evening and I was sitting on the patio and I decided that I need to buy a 4-pack of beer. That's what you buy, is a 4-pack. That way you don't have to buy 12 at one time. And so then as I was sitting there, I started thinking about, oh my gosh, if he's right, what's life going to be like? And how will my life be different without those same conversations and those same fun experiences and knowing that he's in the wings in my life? How will my life be different? Then I started thinking about, and how will I need to communicate with friends and family about him? And then I thought, maybe you should write his eulogy. And my mind just went in 78 different directions. And then I stopped myself and I said, wait a minute. Why are you planning the suffering? Why are you planning the suffering? Instead, what if you just buck your shit up right now, Playboy, and don't assume that you know anything that's occurring, and simply hold space. Be there. Just be there. Just show up. Because it's not about me. It's about creating a space of beauty. And when I shifted out of that place, and I know that's an extreme example, but we do that every day. When I shifted out of that place where I felt like I had to create some type of emotion or manage some thought or predict some thought or even plan my actions based on one little tiny bit of information I heard. Why'd I do that? Because I was mitigating my own fears. So what I then did was I said, okay, if he's right, and if his energy transmutes, which is really an interesting concept when you think about the idea of death. Death is nothing more than a transmutation of energy. We reconstitute in another environment, another way, another thing. We think. We do not know, but we think. But if you think that death is nothing more than a changing of the energy. The soul departs, the body's left, the carcass, right? Then doesn't it make sense that if we're all energetic, evolving beings, we should celebrate someone's transmutation? We should look at that and say, they've gone on now to a different evolutionary place. We should celebrate someone's transmutation just like we celebrate their college graduation, or when they find the love of their life, or when they look in the mirror and finally can say, you are a beautiful, brilliant soul. We should celebrate it instead of breeding all the emotion around it, right? So here's the bottom line for me. If you're wrestling with some change in your life and you want to acknowledge that you're actually on a path of evolution and that you are being held or orchestrated or crafted by something bigger and more profound than you, if you're in that place and you know that change is what's happening all the time, Dig deeply. Look at your fears. Look at those thoughts that limit you, those emotions that paralyze you, and those stories that reinforce actions that keep you oppressed. Go to that place. And then systematically, simply say, do I need to believe that? Does that work for me anymore? Is that creating the best, most peaceful, joyful life for me possible? And then start to create. Create in your soul. Create the world that you choose to live in. And get the fuck out of the fear. All right, thanks for hanging out with me, you guys. Steve, Tasha, Trevor, all of you are beautiful people, and I'm so grateful that you're in my life. Be well, friends. Happy day to you.